It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I will be your host this morning. We're going to cover a lot of ground today because, as most of you know, there's a ton of stuff happening out there, a lot of which the mainstream media is doing everything in their power to cover up. I don't actually call them the mainstream media anymore, and I'd like you to start to refer them in their proper context. What they actually are is the Ministry of Propaganda. And I believe that all Americans should begin to refer to them that way so that those people, recognize something. The concept or the statement that, oh, you watched the Ministry of Propaganda on the news tonight? Just that one statement alone, or that question, will enable people to begin to think and question themselves. Question what they hear. It's not that you made a major impact in that person's life. But what it does do is the next time they're sitting there and they're watching something on Fox or CNN or MSNBC or ABC, CBS, NBC, they say to themselves, that little statement that you made or that question you asked pops up in the back of their mind and says, should I trust what I'm hearing here? It forces people to be critical thinkers in spite of themselves. And so I would encourage everyone to use that phrase and begin using it on a frequent basis. Find a way to interject it into the conversation. Do it subtly. But you see, that's part of our leadership role in helping to wake up the population of the country. Our job is, look, how many times have you been in a situation where somebody tried to get you to believe something and they browbeat you with it? It doesn't work. It's the other way around. Your job, especially with people who are either asleep, completely apathetic, in other words, not asleep but not really caring, or those who are diametrically opposed because they refuse to admit that they were wrong. I mean, those three groups of people are the people that you need to be, proselytizing about truth in media. Because those are the people that either are falling for it, and of course many of them, especially those who are apathetic or completely clueless, they may not even watch media. I don't know. But the idea is that there are subtle ways in which you can get the message across that they're being brainwashed, that they're being manipulated by the system to think and feel in a certain way. When someone, mentions something, you can say, oh, did you find that on the Ministry of Propaganda? I mean, the mainstream media news? Yeah, you realize that that's all propaganda, right? I mean, just next time you're watching the news, just watch and see how much you can question if you read between the lines. And then turn around and walk away. Leave them to draw their own conclusions. But give them enough of a taste of the steak that they say, I want more. Okay. One of the things that we're going to talk about in our first segment this morning is these Benghazi emails that are clearly exposing not only the lies of this administration, which are, just unbelievably numerous, but beyond that, the fact that these people knew day one that this was an act of terror, and they have effectively done anything and everything in their power to hide the truth. Now, Congress has asked repeatedly for these emails. And the argument that we're getting from Jay Carney is that, well, this email, because Congress asked for emails about Benghazi, his response was, well, this wasn't a Benghazi email. Ladies and gentlemen, that's like sitting there and saying to your child, you know what, dinner is being made. I don't want you eating any sweets before dinner. And your kid goes and eats a gigantic half of a piece of a pie in the refrigerator, and you say, I thought I told you not to eat anything before dinner. Well, I didn't eat any sweets. This is pie. This isn't sweets. I mean, really? I mean, how ridiculous an assumption is that to make? And who's going to actually believe that? You see, when Jay speaks, credulity is stretched to the breaking point. Everything about this guy, he portrays himself as this Ozzie and Harriet, him and his wife, Let me tell you something. This guy is a patent liar. Patent liar. You can't say anything else about it. I watched O'Reilly last night, and by the way, for the first time I saw him actually become infuriated about, and I encourage you to jump on and catch his interview or his segments about it, in which, they were trying to defend this, which is, of course, defending the indefensible. And he actually became incensed about it. And, if there's one thing, I throw O'Reilly under the bus on a lot of things. Last night, he was right. And I always want to make sure that I give credit where it's due. He made some very, very good points last night, and I would encourage you to watch it, especially when he was doing the interviews after his talking points memo. But this issue of the White House, first of all, here's my take on the whole thing. And by the way, let me just clarify for you in housekeeping. The second segment we're going to do is about Sebelius, Kathleen Sebelius, who's declaring herself unilaterally exempt from a subpoena before Congress. She actually has the nerve to say that she doesn't have to respond and testify before Congress if she's asked to or ordered to. Really? The hubris and the arrogance of this political class has just reached a crescendo point. Our third segment, Obamacare numbers are finally arriving, and they're not looking good. Only 67%, just over two-thirds, actually paid. And the numbers for the number of 18 to 34-year-olds, which is their holy grail of participants, is only 25%. They needed it to be 40%. And then our last segment is the Wyoming governor has actually come out and stated the EPA is waging war on coal. And we're going to talk about that because the EPA is not just out of control on coal, but a host of other issues. And I know you guys hear me talk about the EPA, but I got to tell you, these agencies are the key. They are the hinge pin of the destruction of the United States of America. And I can't stress that strongly enough. These federal agencies are the cause of the end of our republic. Directly. Because the government and the administration use these agencies as weapons of mass destruction against us, because they can implicate us and injure our economy and our social welfare and so forth with policies and rules that aren't actual law, because he can't get Congress to pass those. So what he does is he uses these administrative agencies as his personal army. They are a weapon of mass destruction, ladies and gentlemen. And they're being used liberally, applied liberally, exploded liberally on the American people. All right. First and foremost, I want to commend Judicial Watch. Kudos to them. Judicial Watch is a not-for-profit organization that is not a media organization. And I got to tell you, what kills me about this is that these guys did what all the lapdog Ministry of Propaganda couldn't do with all their power, all their money, all their influence, all their alleged investigative journalism, all of their pull, all of their, here's the point. What an indictment of the media that Judicial Watch went out there and filed a Freedom of Information Act that any investigative journalist could have done and didn't do, and knocked the socks off of every one of them. They got what Congress couldn't get. They got what the media refused to get. And they have exposed lies and treason to America. Kudos to Judicial Watch. I'm telling you right now, that's an organization that these guys have a great website, which is judicialwatch.org. Their slogan is, because no one is above the law. And I cannot commend them enough. They have a lot of different aspects to their website, in election integrity, the Obama Accountability Project, petitions to governors, Corruption Chronicles is a segment that they, an investigative bulletin, a press room. I got to tell you, open records, document archives, these guys are doing what our media won't do for profit. Our for-profit media, which, I expect that they're not necessarily going to be, all patriot all the time. I understand that they want to make money and so forth and so on. But this organization, Judicial Watch, has none of their resources. They are shunned by the political class because these guys actually get stuff done. They expose these people in Congress. They expose people in the administration. The truth is, they're doing what the media should be doing. And I'm grateful and I'm appreciative of their efforts. I wish I had money to donate to them. I truly do, because I would. And I'm not a big, fan of donating to organizations, but this is one which I would willfully and gratefully step up to the plate, because this organization repeatedly now, it's not one time, it's not twice, it's multiple times they've come out and exposed that which our media won't do. And I say won't because I got to tell you, folks, Freedom of Information Act is, when you're a media organization, they don't charge. I mean, if you file one as an individual citizen and you say, I want my records, they can charge you, X whatever cents or dollars per page or whatever. But for a media organization, they don't charge. And, so you might get 3,000 or 5,000 or 50,000 documents. Why is it the Judicial Watch is able to do what the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda, the 6 companies that tell us everything that we should think and eat and take and drink and act like, with all of their hundreds of billions of dollars? I mean, collectively, those 6 organizations are probably worth well over $1 trillion. They have massive budgets. They have research teams. And instead of doing research on things that matter like this, they declare it a non-controversy and would rather, investigate the latest swimsuit craze or the latest Kim Kardashian, butt photo. I mean, come on, really. Well, everybody's interested in human interest stories. You know what they actually said as their excuse for not investigating Benghazi? The American people aren't interested in it. They're not interested in it because you're not telling them about it. If they knew about it, they would be. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it in and of itself is a level of betrayal of the American people that you can't possibly condone or approve or accept. It is shameful. I've asked this question before, and I'm going to ask you to think about it amongst yourselves for a moment. What is the mainstream media going to do when Barack Obama's gone? They have no credibility left. If Hillary gets in, they can continue along this path for a little while longer. If Hillary doesn't get in, and a Republican or a conservative were to get in, what would they do? How are they going to stand up and say, we are the purveyors of truth? If the entire thing melts down and the economy crashes and all of this stuff is exposed or whatever, how are they ever going to say, well, we did our due diligence and we saw this coming. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who wants to go out there and look. I mean, look, I'm one flea on the elephant's butt, and I find this stuff. Why can't, and I don't have a research team. I mean, I got a research team. It's me between 4 o'clock and about 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, you may not necessarily agree with all of my opinions or my takes on how they present the news, but look, the evidence out there is overwhelming, folks. Daily Caller's got an interesting story out there. The White House Benghazi spin. Critics in the White House are politicizing the evidence and stating that what they're politicizing is the Daily Caller politicizing the evidence. White House spokesman says critics are politicizing evidence showing that her colleagues politicized the government's reaction to the deadly September 20 jihadi attack on the U.S. Unlike those who insist on politicizing the events in Benghazi, our focus remains on ensuring that a tragedy like this isn't repeated in Libya or anywhere else in the world. Bernadette Meehan. Let me tell you something. I keep hearing that excuse. Well, our job is to make sure that this never happens again. No, your job is to hold those accountable who did wrong. That's your job. That will ensure it doesn't happen again. When people are sitting in the Gray Bar Hotel and they're afraid to bend over to pick up the soap, when people are sitting there and they've been stripped of their titles and they've been fined into capitulation, when those people have lost all standing, when they are barred and dishonorably discharged from the public visage, then you will have a motivating factor behind your desire to end the abuse. That's it, folks. It's not a function of sitting there and saying, we've got a problem with procedure. It's not a problem with procedure. It's a problem with ideology. It's a problem with a blind allegiance to a concept or a principle rather than the benefit of the American people, which is what everybody in the government ought to be working for. Everybody in the media ought to be working for. Everyone's lost sight of the ball and the goal. The goal is not the allegiance to President Barack Obama or allegiance to social justice or allegiance to redistribution of wealth. The allegiance is to the nation and the benefit of the nation as a whole. You don't achieve that by allying yourself with only one political party or one political ideologue out of all of the parties. How do these people should be embarrassed to show their faces on the street, much less in a camera? Really? I mean, Cheryl Atkinson, I applaud her. Cheryl Atkinson is from lately was from CBS News, and she left. Very lucrative job, because CBS wouldn't allow her to, run these programs and do the stories that she knew were out there. Well, let me tell you something. Are you aware that when we talk about I'm sorry, I was reading something there. When we talk about I just lost my complete train of thought. Please don't send me messages. When we were talking about Cheryl Atkinson, this is a woman who left CBS News because they barred her from doing this particular story in large part. I mean, it wasn't exclusively that, but that was a significant portion of it. She wanted to do stories about Benghazi, among others, and they wouldn't let her. And she did all this homework and research. And, hey, folks, guess what? She was one of the first people to talk about the fact that Ben Rhodes, the assistant to President Obama, and he's the Deputy National Security Advisor. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is a guy who's meeting with the president in the Oval Office on a daily basis. Okay? And his brother is the president of CBS News. Are you going to try and tell me that that's not a conflict of interest? Now, I'm not saying that you can hold Ben Rhodes responsible for his brother's activities or vice versa. I'm just saying that if you were to go and apply for a job at, say, the CIA, and your wife worked for the Russian consulate, you don't actually think you'd get the job, do you? I mean, really? And you see, that just goes to show you how deep in bed the Ministry of Propaganda is with the administration. What they should be saying is, Mr. Rhodes, we can't give you this job because your brother works for a news agency that is exposing us. That's the right way to look at it, ladies and gentlemen. Instead, CBS is so deeply in bed with the administration that the administration says, hey, having Ben Rhodes on our staff because his brother is the president of CBS News is actually a Benny because we get to influence and silence CBS News. When what they should be saying is, Mr. Rhodes, you can't have that position because we don't want your brother to use you to gain information about us that he can use to expose us. That would be fear of the media. And that would mean the media was actually doing their job. Don't count on that happening anytime soon. I mean, I tell you what. 20 months we've been at this on Benghazi. For 20 months, the administration's been saying, it's not a cover-up. You're all full of poop. There's no reality to it. It was simply a video. We made a mistake. Now the truth is out. There were no mistakes. It was a fact. The White House involvement in the talking points was generated by the CIA and by, or not by the CIA, but by these people in the White House who knew that Benghazi was a direct result. They shaved and lied about this so that they could cover it up, that al-Qaeda was back and strong. And by the way, for the record, there's a Drudge report out this morning that says that al-Qaeda and Islamic Jihad attacks are up by some staggering percentage. I'd have to find the article for you. But, I mean, the point is we're not anywhere close to putting them down. State Department says al-Qaeda affiliates surge and terrorism is spiked to staggering numbers. Here's the problem. It's all lies, and it was all about a cover-up for making sure this president got elected, and secondarily, from keeping the American population from knowing that they were making sure they were arming al-Qaeda with American arms, which is aiding and abetting a known and sworn enemy of the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, that's an act of treason, and if the media will ever have the courage to talk about that, I'll change my argument on them, but until that time, I will not. They are guilty of treason, aiding and abetting a sworn, known enemy of the nation. They armed al-Qaeda. They did it on purpose with malice aforethought. They knew that those arms would later on be used. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out once you give them the gun, it doesn't break after the war is over with their chosen enemy of Libya. Those arms were going to get reused again, but this time against us. That was an act of terrorism against the American people because these same weapons are being used to kill our people overseas. We'll be back in just a moment.